Assalamualaikum and hi, we are from Group 6 who would like to talk about registration and licensing program for fishing vessels in Malaysia. Malaysia, a coastal nation with a coastline of 4,800 km, has a significant fishing industry that plays a crucial role in food security and the economy. The sector employs approximately 80,952 fishermen and operates over 32,846 fishing vessels. The Fisheries Act of 1985 serves as the cornerstone of fisheries management in Malaysia, establishing guidelines for the registration and licensing of fishing vessels and gears to ensure sustainable fishing practices. The primary aim of the registration and licensing program is to control the number of fishing vessels, maintain fishery resources, and promote responsible fishing practices, thereby supporting the livelihoods of local fishermen while safeguarding marine ecosystem. By implementing effective monitoring and management strategy, the program seeks to balance economic needs with environmental conservation, ensuring the long-term viability of Malaysia's fisheries. Registration and licensing program for fishing vessels in Malaysia aligns well with Sustainable Development Goal 14, SDG 14, which aims to conserve and sustainable use the ocean seas and marine resources for sustainable development. Therefore, a registration and licensing program for fishing vessels in Malaysia contributes to SDG 14 by promoting sustainable fishing, reducing illegal activities, and helping conserve marine resources for future generations.
Data have shown that the number of licensed fishing vessels in Malaysia have increased about 3.6% from 32,846 units in 1998 to 34,051 units in 1999. 80% of the registered vessels operate traditionally. Fishermen in Malaysia have a variety of fishing gears ranging from traditional fishing sticks, push nets to the modern gears like trawl nets and purse seines. In Malaysia, the marine fisheries can be classified into three categories, which is inshore fisheries, offshore fisheries, and distant water fisheries. The fishermen in Malaysia also can be classified into two groups, which is traditional fishermen and commercial fishermen. Traditional fishermen use gears such as drift netting, hooks and lines, and traps. And the fishing zone for this group is Zone A, Zone B, Zone C, and Zone C2. But these vessels mainly operated in Zone A due to its small size, which is less than 10 GRT. Meanwhile, the commercial fishermen use fishing gears such as trawl net and purse seine. And the fishing zone for these fishermen is based on the vessel's GRT. For the vessels with less than 40 GRT, it can be operated in Zone B. For the vessel with 40 to 70 GRT, it operated in Zone C. And for the vessels with 70 GRT and above, it can operate in Zone C2.
I'm going to share with you the history and importance of the registration and licensing program for fishing vessels in Malaysia. This program plays a key role in managing our fishing industry and ensuring sustainable fishing practices. Let's start with some background. The very first law to regulate fishing in Malaysia was the Fisheries Ordinance, introduced back in 1909. This law saw several updates over the years, specifically in 1912, 1924, and 1926, until it was repealed in 1951. By that time, the fisheries rules of 1951 took over, along with other state-level ordinances. These early regulations were mostly focused on traditional fishing with limited rules. However, things changed in the 1960s when trawling, a more industrial fishing technique, was introduced to coastal waters. This created a lot of tension between traditional fishers and trawl operators. The conflicts highlighted the need for a stronger legal framework. To address this, the Fisheries Act of 1963 was introduced to better manage fishing activities in Malaysian waters. This act was then updated in 1985 with the Fisheries Act, which set clear guidelines for fishing vessel registration and licensing. Under this law, any fishing vessel and fishing gear must be registered and licensed before it can operate in Malaysian waters. This ensures better control and regulation over who could fish and with what equipment. So, what's the purpose of this licensing? There are two main goals. The first one is to regulate fishing effort. By managing the number of licenses issued, authorities can control how many people are fishing and prevent overfishing. The second goal is to encourage coastal fishers. Licensing aims to improve income for coastal communities by keeping the fishing industry sustainable and manageable. In 1981, the Fisheries Licensing Policy was introduced. This policy emphasized restructuring inshore fishing, aiming to reduce the number of fishes to ensure that fishing is sustainable in the long run. The policy is designed to help protect fish stocks while making sure that those in the industry can earn a fair income.
Objectives of the fisheries licensing policy include: first, maintain fishery resources to achieve optimum yield; second, to ensure the maximization of catches and to increase the level of income of the inshore fishermen; third, eliminate competition and intersectoral conflict through allocation of resources; fourth, a more equitable distribution of catches between traditional and commercial fishermen; lastly, restructuring the ownership pattern of fishing units among various ethnic groups in accordance with the new economic policy. Under this policy, several programs and strategies were employed to achieve desired objectives, including: first, establishment of fishing zones. The establishment of 4 fishing zones through a limited licensing scheme whereby zones were designated for specific fishing method, class of vessel and ownership pattern. The establishment of the 4 fishing zones was the main strategy employed in the allocation of fishing areas. These 4 zones were: Zone A, from shore up to 5 nm, reserved solely for small-scale fishers using traditional fishing gear and owner-operated vessels. Zone B, 5 to 12 nm, reserved for owner-operated commercial fishing vessels of less than 40 GRT using trawl nets and purse seine nets. There is no restriction for Zone B operate in Zone C and C2. For Zone C, 12 to 30 nm, commercial fishing vessels of more than 40 GRT using trawl nets and purse seine nets are allowed to operate. Zone C operators can operate in C2 but not otherwise. For C2, 30 to EEZ limit or 200 nm, beyond 30 nm where deep sea fishing vessels of 70 GRT and above are allowed to operate. Next, determination of total allowable catch. Within each zone, it is further intended to limit the number of vessels permitted to operate so that fishing pressures do not exceed the maximum sustainable yield. In order to conserve inshore fisheries resources of the west coast of Peninsular Malaysia, there is currently no issuance of new licenses. Lastly, restructuring of the fishery industry. The licensing of fishermen will permit effective monitoring to limit entry into the industry. Restructuring through reduction of the number of fishermen will also be carried out on a voluntary basis and by non-renewal of licenses for diseased and or marginal fishermen. Alternative employment opportunities in aquaculture, food processing, agriculture, land scheme, small business enterprises, and industrial skill training will be provided. To implement all these programs, the Department of Fisheries Malaysia has 13 state offices and district offices all over the country to oversee and implement all aspects of fisheries management, such as registration and licensing of fishing vessels and fishing gears, collection of fisheries data and statistics, and enforcement aspects.
In terms of safety measures, the fishery regulation under the Fishery Act 1985 states that every fishing vessel should show proof that it has safety equipment such as life jackets to keep a license renewed. In Malaysia, fishing vessels are also not allowed to carry passengers and cargo. This is in line with the Fisheries Regulation 1985. An individual fisherman is also required to take personal accident insurance. However, vessel insurance is not compulsory for the purpose of annual license renewal. Under the registration and licensing program, all fishing vessels in various states are differentiated into certain code and colors. The registration number must be carved on both sides of the forepart of the hull of the vessel. Meanwhile, for deep sea vessels that more than 70 GRT, the number must also be carved on the top of the wheelhouse, and the wheelhouse of the fishing vessel must be painted with color and code specified for the state as shown.
In a nutshell, the fisheries licensing policy in 1981 was established to control the number of fishing vessels and help preserve fisheries resources in Malaysia. This was further reinforced by the Fisheries Act in 1985, which mandates that all fishing vessels and fishing gear must be registered and licensed to operate within Malaysian fisheries waters. Key licensing strategies include the establishment of fishing zones, setting a total allowable catch, and restructuring the fishery industry by reducing the number of fishermen. These programs help to manage fishing efforts sustainably and ensure that fish stocks remain at optimal level and preventing over exploitation. Thank you for your attention.